get ready to nerd out with us. I have a special guest today, Earnest Hudson. He teaches fitness certification, so he's like the trainer of trainers. And I'm Mimi Bonnie. Maybe you could say a little more about your background?
So here's my background in fitness. I've always been involved in sports and that sort of thing. I've always loved human movement, generally speaking. I played sports, martial arts, breakdancing, etc. When I got into fitness formally, which is in the early 2000s, I first got certified by National Academy of Sports Medicine as a CPT. For myself, it was strictly about getting a gym membership. Didn't even know the true academic basis behind it. I immediately fell in love with it, got into the academics of it. My master's is in exercise science, so I went back, got a master's in the field. I've taught at personal training vocational schools. I've been an adjunct on college campuses. I'm currently managing a New York sports club. So it's been about 18 years in the fitness industry, both as a personal trainer, manager, trainer of trainers, as you said, that sort of thing. So that's me in a nutshell.
Nice. So I'm so excited to dive into that brain of yours. So today we're going to totally geek out about some exercises and movements, in particular the body parts that I'm focused on. So I am focused on, at least for the beginning of this year, on glutes and abs. So I thought maybe I could ask about some of the exercises that I do, and you could help kind of shed some light on why some of them work certain parts, and maybe also suggest some other exercises.
Most certainly, most certainly.
Okay, great. So first up, glutes. I'm actually splitting up my glute workouts into upper glutes and lower glutes. Two primary exercises that I've learned that really hit the upper glutes is one, it's I guess kneeling kickbacks using the Smith machine. So imagine you're on all fours like a dog, and you put your heel on the bar and you kick up, but only to parallel, so that your thighs are parallel to the floor, and so you're not kicking, straight back. So I've been told that if you keep your feet perpendicular, that actually hits the glutes, the upper glutes, more than if you were to completely kick it back, like on those regular kickback machines that they have. Yeah. So do you have any thoughts on that?
Sure. So there's a couple things to think about. Everybody's always focusing on a body part, and they look at the muscle. The truth of the matter is, it's really about the joint. The joint is what moves. The muscle is just moving the joint. When we look at the hip, if you want to work the glute, there's really only one major action that does it. Anytime your leg moves backwards, it's going to work the glute. The question is just what angle are you doing it at to emphasize the different parts of the glutes. So as you said, in the kickback that you're doing with the thigh parallel to the floor, the leg itself perpendicular, and you push straight up, you tend to get the upper fibers. Here's a bit of caution for people who don't have core strength. Oftentimes they'll arch their back in doing that movement because they don't have the core stability. And what they find is that the back may get sore or tender, that sort of thing. And so they have to be very careful that if they do that, they should consider that an advanced movement that requires a lot of core stability and strength to be able to do that exercise effectively and only hit the glutes.
Yeah, I remember doing that in the very beginning, and it was hard with no weights, just the bar. And you're right, you have to stay balanced, so I can see where that core goes in. Oh, great, so that means I am working my core while I'm doing that exercise. Right? Because I hate working abs. I hate working abs. It's so boring. So it's interesting. So you do say that it does work the upper fibers of your glutes.
Yes, it's so for the average person, it won't matter. For someone who's doing more of a fitness competition, bodybuilding, those things begin to matter. Generally speaking, glute maximus is the glute maximus. It's the largest muscle in the body. And as long as you extend that leg back, you're going to work the glutes. However, it is true, if you hold it up slightly higher at a slightly different angle, you tend to feel it a little bit higher up or a little bit lower. But the basic motion becomes the same. You work out pretty hard. You present with a certain physicality. It's more noticeable in somebody like yourself. If somebody's doing it for general fitness or to feel good, they won't notice the results as much because it's harder to see it. It's harder to see the development.
Okay. So you're saying there won't be as much of a difference if you're doing perpendicular or if you're kicking your leg back?
Not for the average person, no.
Okay.
And I'll give you an example from the male perspective. A lot of men are doing chest pressing. And so think of the chest as the equivalent muscle for the upper body, particularly in men. Yeah. Large muscle mass. And they'll do a regular chest press, and then they'll often do an incline chest press to hit the upper fibers. Yeah. So very much the same idea. But the truth of the matter is, if you're not a bodybuilder or extremely lean, most people won't notice the difference at all anyway. Same thing. I see what you're saying. Okay. So then let's talk about the people who are a little more, I don't know, detail-oriented. Let's just say for matters sake, you know. So the other upper glute exercise is doing hip thrusts, but with a lower weight and higher reps so that you can really contract it more and hit that upper fiber. Versus if you were to do heavier weight and lower reps, you would hit the lower glute fibers more. Okay, all right. So let's look at it from this vantage. And I'm saying it strictly from a scientific standpoint. Yeah. The reps and the poundage, the actual weight, how much it is, that percentage of intensity won't actually affect if it's the upper or lower glute in the way that you're describing it. That's more about the development of the muscle itself overall. Does the muscle get more stable, bigger, more powerful, or stronger, generally speaking? If we're looking at what part of the muscle we're hitting, that's more about the angle of the bone that's actually moving. So in the exercise that you described a minute ago, with pushing the leg up, the leg extended, and you're pushing the foot up, that has to do with the placement of the bone itself, the leg. And so if you're doing the floor bridge, so where your body's either, your back is on the bench, and you have the weight across the hips and you're pushing up as you just described, that's more about the placement of the weight and how the body responds to that. That's just pure physics. The repetitions won't matter so much. Now, it depends on what you want. Scientifically, if you tend to do higher reps, that means the intensity is a little bit lower because you can do it longer. If you do a lot of volume, that can lend towards larger muscles and more endurance. That's generally what you get from the higher reps. The heavier weight tends to make you stronger, more powerful, but neither one of them necessarily dictate that you see the muscle more so. I recognize in saying that that's kind of it tends to fly in the face of what we call gym science, which we hear in the gym. People talk all the time, oh, do the high reps for more definition, low reps for bulk. That's actually not scientifically solid. That has to do more with what you're eating. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Your diet will determine that, yes. Yeah, I totally agree with that. So are you saying that it doesn't really matter as much if you're doing higher reps or lower reps in terms of which part of the glutes you work when you're doing the hip thrusts? That is correct. Yep, that is correct. That's right. That's more about the angle of how you're doing it. And I'll give you an example. If you do let's say a deadlift, right? If you have the deadlift with the bar very close to the body, you'll feel it in a certain part of the hamstrings. If you pull the bar further away from the body and do the deadlift, you'll start to feel it more in your back. That has to do with the placement of the weight and how it's affecting the spine and the hips. And so that's just a pure physics thing, not so much how much it weighs or how many reps you did. Yeah, okay. Well, then let me ask you this. Let's say if I am doing lighter weight, would it make sense that I feel it in my upper glutes more because I'm getting more of a contraction because it's lighter? Well, we can say that the muscles in the upper glutes towards the edge of the muscle are not going to be as powerful as the muscles towards the center of the glute, right? Those muscles are going to be respond more to the heavier loads because that's where the mass of the muscle is at. Okay. The muscles towards the fringe of the muscle, towards the outer edges, are not going to be as strong as the center fibers. And so the outer edge muscles tend to be more endurance oriented. Okay. That's generally speaking. So that's if you're feeling it more there, it has more to do with you've done it for a long time and the endurance fibers are more active. Okay. Yep. Okay. So you kind of gave the facts for why that could be, where you are hitting the upper glutes more because of the endurance factor of it. Sure, yeah. But again, it has more to do with the angle. It's got more to do with the angle than the repetitions. And I'll give you an example. You can use heavy weight, low reps, but if the angle is appropriate, you'll still feel it there.
Yeah, okay. I'm just asking because I get this from the glute guy, Brett Contreras, who says, this is upper glutes and this is lower. But I see what you're saying. That actually is really helpful to understand. So really, it works, depending on the angle, it works the entire glutes. But you are saying that
it will work different aspects of it.
But certain parts of your glutes are more prone to work when it's heavier load or if it's more endurance-based.
Generally speaking, yes. That's a broad generalization, but I'll keep it at that for this.
Okay. So then let me ask you then. So what would be a good exercise if you wanted to target the upper glutes?
So I think anything that pushes your... Okay, so the bone that comes off of the hip that your thigh is attached to is called the femur, right? Anything that the femur or your thigh that goes into a hyperextension, that's going to hit the upper glute muscles. So anything that allows that hip to go into hyperextension. So it really doesn't matter the body position as long as it's going into hyperextension. So in the first exercise you named, that thigh is coming up higher than the back. That's hyperextension. You feel it there. If you're doing the floor bridge, when you push your hips up, your hips come up higher, so the back of that leg is back further. You'll feel it there. So anything that forces that thigh into hyperextension, you're going to feel it in those upper fibers. And that's why the back becomes so important. Because if that back isn't stable, it'll also creep into the low back, and you'll feel those muscles become more active as well.
So is there a particular exercise that you would recommend?
There's a lot of different ways of doing it. It just depends on what you do. So people like kettlebell swings. Any type of kettlebell lift where the legs are straighter, you'll feel it at the top of the glutes more if you go into the hyperextension. So let's say, for example, you have a heavy kettlebell. You bend over into a deadlift position. When you come out of it, rather than just coming straight up, tweak it by squeezing the glutes a little bit tighter and arching back just a little bit more so. And you'll feel it there as well. And in fact, the average person can, if a person stands up, just standing up, and they squeeze their glutes, they'll feel the glutes in general. But if you slightly arch back, you'll feel the top of the glutes fire a little bit more so because of the hyperextension. Make sense?
Yeah, nice. Interesting trick there. Okay, cool. Okay, so the other two exercises that are supposedly supposed to work the lower glutes more. One is doing, well, you kind of already explained this, but heavier hip thrust. So that you're working the lower glutes more. I guess maybe because that's where your muscle is. There's more muscle there versus the.
Sure. Also, to the extent the range of motion may not be as great. So if you don't push the hip all the way up, you're going to feel it in what you're defining as the lower glute. If you were able to squeeze it up. But the problem is, or the challenge, I should say, is that the weight is so heavy that it's harder to go through the full range of motion. And so, again, we're looking at the angle. But that's a good one. So even some of those same exercises, you're simply increasing the intensity and altering the range of motion, and that's why you feel it that way.
Okay. So that makes sense.
In fact, I'll do you one. If somebody walks up a flight of stairs, when you go up a flight of stairs, only straighten your leg partially. So I do it on the subway all the time. Whenever I go up subway stairs, I only straighten my leg about 3/4 rather than all the way. And you'll feel the hamstrings and glutes begin to fire because they're having to work really hard because you're not straightening it out all the way.
So are you saying that when you go through the subway, you're trying to work your hams and glutes?
I do a lot of things that people think are weird. That might be one of them.
I like that. I'm going to do that now. Constantly working on the glute hams. And here's another exercise. So the single leg hip thrust. So your back, your back is on the bench, but now you only have one foot on the floor. And you do that. So that's supposedly supposed to also work your lower glutes more. Actually, your lower glutes and your lower glute ham tie-in.
Right. So it doesn't work for lower glutes, yes. Here's why. Again, the same reason. Science simplifies all of this. When you push up, it's harder to get the same range of motion with one leg as it is with two.
Yeah.
With two legs, you can get a better range of motion, so you feel it throughout the glutes. When you have one leg, harder to get it up higher. We therefore altered the angle of the leg, and so we tend to feel it in the lower glute.
Interesting.
Make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So it has more to do with it's still the angle, though you do it. And I would say any exercise that a person is doing for glutes, if you just simply play with don't squeeze the leg all the way through the full range of motion, you're going to feel it more in that. Another great exercise in doing a leg press. Mm-hmm. When you do the leg press, depending on if the feet are up high or low on the plate, you can feel it more in the hamstrings or the quads, just depending on the angle. So for myself, I like to keep my legs very high so that only the heels are on the plate. And when I push it back up, I only come up about 3/4 of the way. Yeah. Fires the hamstrings like crazy, as well as those fibers of the glutes. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, I love doing that. I know exactly what you're talking about. So with that single leg hip thrust, based on what you said, is I do it two versions. I do one where I put my feet on the floor and do a single leg. And I also do another one where I put my leg on a box. So I'm actually on a bench and a box so that I can really go, like dip my butt low and then really go high. But since I'm able to really extend that way, does that mean that it works more of my glute than just the lower, since I have so much more range of motion?
Boy, it's not easy.
Yeah, you get a range of motion, you get it more. I'll give you one better. If you put an Eric's pad, the soft blue foam pad, if you put your foot on top of that, it's more unstable. That means the glute has to fire harder to do the exercise. If you put your feet, when your feet are normally on the floor, put the foam pad under your feet, and you're going to feel that exercise a lot more. Mm-hmm.
What if
you want like a crazy challenge?
What about
the Bosu ball?
Yes, that's what I was just going to say, a Bosu ball.
Yeah, put the feet on top of the Bosu ball and do the same exercise, and it's going to burn like crazy.
Yeah, okay.
Guaranteed.
So that means I actually would feel the lower glutes more if I didn't elevate my feet and just kept it on the floor, because I wouldn't have that full range of motion. Do you know what I'm saying?
That is correct, yeah.
Okay, okay. So I'm going to put my feet on the floor from now on. And it actually is harder on the floor than it elevated. That explains it. Great.
Yeah. Generally speaking, any exercise that extends the thigh is going to work the glutes and the hamstrings. That's just a human reality. Mm-hmm. Now, if you alter the angles, for example, if you have a deep squat where the thighs only come to parallel, okay, we feel that pretty good. If you break parallel, larger range of motion, so you definitely feel it because the muscles have to work harder to go through the full range. Here's the caution. The pelvis naturally does a tilt once you go below parallel. Mm-hmm. It naturally curls under. For people who try to go, the saying is ass to the grass. Yeah. They try to go all the way down to the ground. If you watch, the pelvis curls under, and there can be additional stress on the back because of that movement pattern. Mm-hmm. So generally speaking, a person, this is for the average person, should only go as low as they can until the pelvis begins to tilt. Once it starts to tilt, they're going to feel it in the back. So that could be at parallel. It could be just below parallel. That's just a physical reality for most people. Now, athletes, people who are well-conditioned, they're not the average person, and so they can get away with some things that the average person can't do. So they can go down, butt touching the floor, come close to it, and they can pull it off, but they're prone to do it. I myself, I do a lot of heavy weight, always have done it. I'm an athlete. I've been trained to do it. I'm not the average person, so I can get away with ranges of motion that a lot of people cannot get away with. The average person may want to have some caution.
Okay. So it is true that if the person's body can handle it, they would work their glutes a little more if they went a little below parallel.
Yeah, it's a bigger range of motion, so you're definitely going to feel it a lot more. It's like doing a chest fly and letting that arm come back as far as you can. You're going to feel that a lot more. It's a more dangerous movement, but you would definitely feel it. If you have the joint integrity to do that, go for it.
Okay. So now let's talk about the other exercise that supposedly works the lower glutes more. are sumo deadlifts.
Oh, okay, good. All right. So, okay, good. Yes. Okay, first let me say this. I love deadlifts.
Okay.
That's one of my things. I love deadlifts.
I'm trying to get back into deadlifts.
So the challenge with any deadlift is really the bar placement. Physics. The closer the bar is to the body, the more you will emphasize the legs working. The further the bar is away from the body, the more you're going to feel it in the back. So the real challenge is not so much if the weight is heavy or light, but where we are. So literally when I do that movement pattern, the bar rubs against my legs on the descent. So literally I'm rubbing it against my leg as I go down. I take it down. For me, the plates touch the ground.
Yep.
And then when I pull back up, I'm rubbing it against my legs. So if I have shorts on, I usually have some light scrape marks when I'm doing the deadlifts. But the challenge is for most people, they need to have the flexibility to be able to go to that full range of motion. And by good flexibility, I mean this. If a person can put their spine parallel to the floor while they're bent over at the waist, and that spine is completely straight, they have great flexibility and should be able to have great deadlifts.
Okay. Okay, great. So the bar positioning closer to your feet definitely work more of your legs and further away is your back.
Most certainly, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So now in terms of the sumo, right, that works more of your hamstrings and more of your glutes versus the traditional stance?
You'll feel it in the hamstrings because of the nature of how you're bending over. So a lot of that is emphasizing the hamstrings. But again, once you begin to get the body erect, you're going to feel the glutes lock it out. Now, here's a trick that most people don't do, but they can emphasize to get more glute work. If you don't lock the knees, most people, when they do any kind of deadlift or even squat, when they come all the way up, they lock their knees out and they're bent forward at the waist slightly. Inherently, that means the thigh, the front of the thigh, quads, are going to be working more because it locked the knee. And the glutes are not going to be working as much because they haven't locked out the hips. So the trick is to reverse it. As a person's coming up, they keep a soft knee, very soft bend so the thighs don't lock out, but they really squeeze the glutes and lock the hips out. And now the glutes are working a lot more. It takes a little practice to get it and consciously think of it, but once you lock it in, you'll never change it.
But okay, so I'm trying to think, like when you lock out your glutes at the top, wouldn't your knees be locked out also? Or not necessarily?
Nope, they don't have to lock out. Most people think so, but it's just because they haven't done it. So as you come up, it'll feel like you're slightly bending. You're really not, but you just don't lock the knees out. You just squeeze your butt as tight as you can.
Okay.
The tighter you squeeze the butt, the more it's going to work.
Okay, great. So is it true that sumo does work the glutes a little more than the conventional?
Not necessarily, no. It has to do with the lockout of the hips.
Okay.
So it doesn't matter which one, straight leg deadlift, bent leg deadlift, bent leg squat, whatever it is, doesn't matter. The more you lock the hips, the more you're going to feel it in the glutes.
Okay, so it's more about the lockout. Okay, great.
It's more about the lockout,
Great.
actually. Yep.
That was so helpful. Thank you so much. Thank you again to Earnest Hudson. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let us know by giving us a like or comment below. Let us know if you found it helpful or insightful, or if you have any questions, and if you would like to see more. And be sure to follow Ernest at Ernie Hudson Jr. on Facebook, IG, and Twitter. And check him out on YouTube at Anatomatrix Fitness. I'll leave his info in the description below. All right, that's it for today. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and stay tuned for more.